How are you, everybody? I am Kevin. Hope you guys are doing well. I missed you. It's been a while. We haven't had a chance to talk. But you know what? I had to come on here and just talk a little bit about the news that's happened in boxing. It is Friday afternoon, September 5th, as I record this yesterday on Thursday, September 4th. You probably heard the news, if you're a boxing fan, that former undisputed heavyweight champion Mike Tyson is going to come out of retirement again, and he is going to face Floyd Money Mayweather. That fight is scheduled to be sometime in 2026. No date on that, no site, but just announced that the two fighters had agreed to it, and they will fight sometime next year. Now, Tyson hasn't fought since he was 58 years old and lost a unanimous decision to Jake Paul, the influencer Jake Paul, in November of 2024. Floyd has been fighting a lot of these, kind of BS type fights, but he hasn't had a real fight, obviously, since he fought either Conor McGregor or Andre Berto, however you want to look at it. But it's been a long time for both guys. And depending on when the fight is, we could have a 49-year-old Floyd Mayweather, because his birthday is February 24th, and he will turn 49 on February 24th, 2026, against a 60-year-old Mike Tyson, because Mike's birthday is June 30th. He was born in 1966. So if the fight is in July or later, Mike will be 60 years old when they fight. So in any event, you're going to have a 60-year-old or a nearly 60-year-old versus a 49-year-old. And right, come on, this is ridiculous, but it is boxing. And this comes on the heels of Jake Paul announcing that he is going to fight Gervonta Davis. Now, last November, I mentioned that Tyson fought Jake Paul. Jake Paul, in November 15th, 2024 in Dallas, he weighed 227, and I think it was a quarter, 227, though, against Mike Tyson. He is going to fight this year coming up. He is going to fight Gervonta Davis, who is 133.8 when he fought Lamont Roach in his last fight. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But the Tyson and Mayweather fight, that is just so appalling, because boxing is dangerous at its core. Absolutely. Nope. The best fighter in the world can get seriously injured. It is a really dangerous sport. But now we're putting a 60-year-old in against a 49-year-old. And think about this. And I don't think anybody who was involved in putting this fight on probably thought about this. But look at the damage that Jake Paul versus Tyson did to the sport's credibility. Because even though everybody in boxing knew what was going to happen, I wrote many, many, many times. I said it in videos. I said it in interviews. I said it in everything I did in the media before Tyson fought Jake Paul, how the fight would go. Paul was going to win the fight. Tyson would not be able to throw punches. He would not be able to get off, and Jake would win a wide decision. But what happened? That's how the fight unplayed. But then a lot of the fans said it was fixed, because they were thinking of the Mike Tyson of the 1980s and 1990s. And they were fooled by these short clips of Mike shoe shining and looking like he was fast for 5 or 10 seconds. And they didn't realize that that's not who Mike really is, that Mike was not having anybody throw punches back at him, so he didn't have to worry about getting hit. And it was a 5 or 10 second clip, right? I don't think much of Jake Paul as a fighter, but he is a 220-pound guy. He's 27 years old. So when Mike was fighting him, Mike is at 58 years old, had to worry. But a lot of people just seem to forget about that. They didn't seem to take that into account, and they were crying fix. Now we're going to go forward, and we're going to have another roughly 80-pound gap between the fighting weights of what Tyson was in his prime and what Floyd Mayweather was in his prime. And they're 49 and 60 years old. Coming into the fight with Mike coming off that Jake Paul fiasco. And so now it just makes the sport look so ticky tack, right? Um, and I don't understand why we're in this position. Boxing in the United States used to be the biggest sport, or maybe the second or third biggest sport in the country from, let's say, 1920 through 1960. Let's use that time frame. Maybe we can even go a few years longer. Um, Horse racing was big, baseball was big, and boxing. For those 40 years that I said, that was the big three. But the sport was always neglected. It was run by the mob for a long time. And when other sports started to grow and build and become professional and really offer themselves as truly complete professional sports, boxing lagged behind. And boxing had a bunch of charlatans in the sport looking to make a quick buck. Not everybody was, but there were so many of them. There's no barrier to entry. No matter what, none of these people could go buy an NFL team, as an example, but they can go out there and they can become a boxing promoter or buy somebody's license who already is a boxing promoter, and they can put on a farcical fight like Floyd Mayweather versus Mike Tyson. Floyd, one of the biggest draws in history. Mike, one of the biggest draws in history. I think, if you think of the pay-per-view era, Mike is the bigger draw, right? Because when Mike was in his prime in fighting, the number of households that were wired to get pay-per-view was much, 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 much smaller than it was when Mayweather finally kind of started doing well. Tyson did most of his pay-per-view business in the early to mid 90s, right? The Lennox Lewis fight in 2002 did, 2 million. Floyd started his pay-per-view journey in 2006, against Arturo Gatti, and that was his first pay-per-view. And each time out, it got bigger and bigger, the universe of wired homes. So Floyd had a lot more homes to sell to than Mike Tyson did. But I think nonetheless, when you think about the biggest draws in boxing history, Mike and Floyd are certainly among those. And you could say that along with Muhammad Ali, these are the three biggest attractions in the sport's history. But do we want to drag a 60-year-old man into a boxing match again? I understand why Mike Tyson is doing it. He's going to get a huge payday. But the people who are doing this, are they thinking about the long-term impact that it's going to have on the sport? Are they thinking about the risk that Mike Tyson will face being in the ring? We saw he was unable to compete at any kind of professional level against Jake Paul. And if you think about it, when was Mike's last good performance, right? If you go back into a regular fight, you're going to be looking, I think maybe Clifford Etienne, if we consider, he fought Clifford Etienne in Memphis, and that was February 22nd of 2003. It was coming off the Lennox Lewis fight where Lennox smoked him, and he fought Clifford Etienne. Etienne, was a fighter of some note at that time, but Etienne was intimidated badly by Tyson and got knocked out in one round. But, let's say that that's the last time Mike looked good. Certainly he didn't look good after that, and anybody he fought after that. And in 2005, when he walked away from boxing after fighting Kevin McBride, he was the definition of a shot fighter. So when he came back, people were expecting to see the old Mike Tyson, and there was no way that was happening. And what they got was a in-name only version of Mike Tyson. And then they cried foul. They were yelling the fight is fixed, and it brought all this bad reputation onto boxing when the fight was not fixed. Absolutely was not fixed. What was fixed was the opponent. When you had a 27-year-old guy who, even though he is not a great fighter himself, and Jake Paul was in shape, he was 27 years old, and he was fighting a 58-year-old. Jake had been training regularly. Mike had not. Mike was sick for part of last year. All these things, right? a prime Mike Tyson beats Jake Paul in 15 seconds. I mean, you know it, I know it, everybody. Jake Paul knows it, everybody knows it. Jake Paul wouldn't be in the same county as Mike Tyson if Mike Tyson wanted to fight him when Mike was in his prime. But Jake is an opportunist. He understands how to market and make money, and so he took advantage of Mike's name and he made a big payday for himself. But that comes at a cost to the sport of boxing. It's become a clown show, a circus act. And that's what really disturbs me about this, because it's going, even though these aren't people who are considered the leading promoters in boxing, they're big names. The public doesn't understand that. The public associates this with what boxing is. There is no commissioner in boxing. There's no head person that sets the rules for the entire sport. And they are doing this as an exhibition, just like the Jake Paul Gervonta Davis fight is, so they can get around regulation. They don't want to have an athletic commission regulate them because no athletic commission would let this happen. This, a lot of people call it a money grab. And it is a money grab, but I'm not against money grabs. People deserve to earn a living. People deserve, as entrepreneurs, to go out there and sell a product and try to make money. But I think, you are harming an entire industry when you do this. This is not just affecting your bottom line on this fight. This is affecting the sport as a whole. And that's my problem with what's going on. I really just don't understand the rationale for doing this other than a short-term gain. But I don't even think it's going to do that. Like, are you going to pay $85 or $90 to buy this fight? We don't even know when and where it's going to be. All we know is that the fighters have supposedly signed. That's what they told us in a news release. So, if we accept that on face value, that they have signed a contract and that they will fight sometime next year, or they'll meet in a exhibition contest, I guess that's the best way to put it. Would you pay $80 to see that? $85, maybe $100? I think the fight is going to flop, but the people who do pay it are going to be upset. They're going to complain loudly. They're going to cry fix, this whole 9 yards. And I just say, be careful of what you buy. Look and think about what you were buying. If you want to buy it as a farce and as a night of entertainment and laugh at it, I hate to see two greats like Mike Tyson and Floyd Mayweather laughed at. But if that's what you want, okay, go into it with your eyes wide open. But if you actually think you're going to see a boxing match whenever they fight, you got another thing coming. I have a bridge in Brooklyn I want to tell you. Hope everybody is doing well. Enjoy the fights. What's left of the good fights, enjoy those. And I will pop in here sometime again soon. Good to see y'all. Be well. Thanks.